Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum and I'm here today at the Rock Island Auction House taking a look at some of the guns that they're going to be selling in their upcoming May of 2017 premiere auction. And today we're taking a look at a gun that might not be quite as forgotten as you think. This is a ring pistol. It is a Le Petit Protecteur, and it is, in this case, a 5-shot, 5mm pinfire ring pistol. Now, there's some interesting history to these, or rather an interesting, maybe less history than you'd think. These are all designed to look like French guns from the 1830s to 1870s, somewhere in that era, because that is the era of the pinfire cartridge. However, these are actually pretty modern production guns. Not like mass production, but these were all manufactured in the 20th century. Specifically to evoke that feeling of mid-1800s French, interesting little steampunky sort of Firearms Curiosa, really. And they're really cool guns. They're quite well made, but there are a lot of people out there who have the impression that these are actually 150-year-old antiques, when they're actually not. So when you find these, they're usually in these nice velvet-lined French-fitted cases like this one. Now, unfortunately, this case has rather fallen apart at some point, but we've got the fitted section, and there's some other pieces of it as well. But let's take a look at the mechanics first. So these were made in both 5- and 6-shot varieties. This is a 5-shot and 5mm. There was also a 6-shot 4mm gun, and in fact there was a second version that was even smaller, that was a 7-shot 2mm pinfire version. If we look on the bottom, running around the circumference of the ring is the name Le Petit Protector, the small protector. That is the hammer. That is for indexing the cylinder, and that is the trigger. So you index this manually. There are little notches cut in the cylinder, and this little spring holds them in place. And then you actually have to manually cock this hammer, which is not trivial. Reach under there with a fingernail and pry it out. There we go. That is now in the cocked position, and it holds, you can see the little holes in the bottom of each cylinder there that hold the pins. And so one of those pins lines up under this. That acts as the hammer, and it is being held in place by this bar. So you can see exactly what that's doing right there. It's just holding the hammer back. So in order to fire it, I take this and push it that direction, and it will snap and fire. And the way you would, in theory, use this is to have it on your index finger and use your thumb, pop, like that, to fire it. You would then index the cylinder, recock the hammer, or probably recock the hammer and then index the cylinder to make sure you didn't accidentally slip and fire it with your hand in front of it. This is simultaneously incredibly dangerous and not dangerous at all. It is not dangerous at all because the ammunition it fires is really, really paltry and tiny. Here is a 5mm pinfire cartridge. There's pretty much nothing to it. And of course, it has absolutely no barrel. So that bullet is going to be literally flush with the top of the cylinder. And this thing is going to develop extremely little velocity. I don't have any actual numbers on it, but virtually no velocity at all from this. So in that respect, it's a very safe sort of thing. On the other hand, it is so small that just manipulating it, you really can't do that without putting your hand in front of the cylinders inadvertently. And while that doesn't develop a whole lot of energy, it does develop enough that if you manage to accidentally fire it with your hand in front of it like this, you would definitely hurt yourself. This is one of those things that is substantially more dangerous to the person wearing it than anybody else. And of course, it's not exactly subtle. I mean, someone's probably going to notice that you've got a revolver on your finger if you're carrying this thing. I suppose in theory you could flip it around and carry it like this, and then, oh, you're cool, until, oh, what's that? The one other mechanical operation to show you here would be reloading. And in order to do that, you actually have to remove the cylinder. So I'm going to take out this little center axis screw, which is really, really small. So there's that screw. Then the cylinder just comes off. It's got a central spindle there, and there's our 5-shot cylinder. You can see the slots here, the cutouts for the cartridge pins. So the cartridges are going to load in just like that, sit flush at the back. The pin protrudes out so it can be hit by the hammer, driven into the cartridge where it will hit the primer right on the inside down here, and that detonates the whole thing. And you can see that they do in fact sit right up flush with the face of the cylinder. So very little space to build velocity before this thing is completely out of the cylinder. A really, really anemic sort of system. One last thing I forgot to point out before. The spring that actually powers the hammer is this central blued ring there. So when I cock this, you can see that that is being pushed down into the body of the ring. So that band is acting like a flat spring. That's pretty clever. That's slick. All right, now let's move on to the second half of this, which is the history of these. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who are going to say, you know, look at this, well, I saw one of these on Pawn Stars or something like that, and they said it was antique. Well, it's actually not. Our first clue at that is just reading what's written on here. Le Petit, I mean, that's French. This is supposed to be French. And then Protecteur, that is English. In French, the word, the translation of Protector, is spelled E-U-R, not O-R. And this marking isn't just on the ring, it's also on the cover of the box, right there. Same thing, half French, half English. And then the boxes that these come in. They're all very nice boxes, but they're all different. You can go online and see pictures of probably half a dozen of these that have come up for sale in various places. The colors are different, the shapes are different. Some of them have straight lines of cartridges, some are curved. Let's see, there is normally, this one has fallen apart a bit, but there is normally a silk inner lining to the top of the box with the name of a company, and it's always going to be a jeweler company. They're typically British companies, and they're all different. And what's actually going on here is that these are jewelry cases that were repurposed, new linings made, new fittings made for these ring pistols. So if this had been an actual serial production antique gun done by someone, say, in France in the 1800s, they would have had all the same boxes because you make them all the same. That's how this sort of thing is economical to do. But they didn't. They're made to be decorative and to look nice, and they're done one at a time. And then there are also some circumstantial issues. These are things like, you know what, that center axis screw and the spindle that it goes into, they don't really look like they're made in the 1800s. I've seen a lot of 1800s guns. I know that they can do extremely fantastic machining in those times, but this just doesn't quite pass the smell test. Also, you pretty much only find these in this sort of nearly perfect condition. You won't ever, or at least I've never seen one, that's beat up, rusty, no finish, and only half works. And if these guns were actually 150 years old, you'd have some of those that people had actually worn and used, as well as having some in this sort of condition that people had just bought and then kept in a box. The fact that they're all really nice really points to them being modern production things. They were all sold to collectors who bought them because of their just really cool aesthetic. Nobody ever tried to actually wear these around. In fact, if you look at Rock Island's description on this, this ring pistol, you'll see that while it does mention the connections to the 1800s, it does also say that it is most likely manufactured in the late 20th century. The one last piece of evidence that really just kind of solidifies this whole question for me is the fact that Louis Winant, in his book Firearms Curiosa, which is really the vintage be-all guide to weird, crazy guns, well, he doesn't mention these. And if these had existed in the 60s, when he wrote this book, they absolutely would have been in there. So the fact that there aren't, to me, is kind of the last nail in the coffin, so to speak. But of course, none of that really has to detract from what this mechanically really is. One of the maxims that I think is quite wise that you will hear in gun collecting circles is you buy the gun and not the story. And that's particularly important when you come to something like this, where maybe there's a popular understanding that's different from the actual history of an item. So that doesn't, however, take away from really cool features that these things do have. I can really appreciate what the manufacturer, what the craftsmen, really, who put these things together, were going for. It's a ring pistol. It's it's got all the aesthetic of a really cool and fantastic condition ring pistol. So if you'd like to have one yourself for your own collection, take a look at the link in the description text below. That will take you to Rock Island's catalog page, where you can see their close-up pictures of this, their description, their price estimate, and all that good stuff. And if you're interested in it, you can place a bid right through their website. Thanks for watching.